The night was still, a blanket of calm draped over the quiet suburban streets. Officer Jamal Carter cruised through the dimly lit neighborhood, the hum of his patrol car blending with the rhythmic crackle of his radio. It was an uneventful shift so far, the kind that lulled officers into a false sense of routine. But Jamal had been in the force long enough to know that quiet nights often carried their own kind of trouble. As he reached an intersection, his headlights caught the faint movement of a dark sedan rolling through a stop sign without even slowing down. Jamal sighed, flipping on his lights. It wasn't the worst offense, but a stop sign was a stop sign, and the law didn't bend for late-night drivers. The sedan hesitated before pulling over to the side of the road. Something about the way it stopped felt off, almost reluctant. Jamal parked behind it, radioed in the stop with his usual professionalism, then stepped out into the cool night air. His boots crunched against the pavement as he approached the driver's side window, his senses sharpening. Years on, the force had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, something didn't sit right. The window rolled down smoothly, revealing a man in his late 40s with neatly combed hair and an unsettlingly polished appearance for the hour. His button-down shirt was crisp, his demeanor confident, almost too much so. "Good evening, officer," the man said, offering a polite smile. "Was I speeding?" Jamal kept his expression neutral. "No, sir. You ran a stop sign back there. License and registration, please." The man, Stephen Blake, chuckled lightly, as if trying to ease the tension. "Ah, my mistake. Long night. Just trying to get home." Jamal took the documents and gave them a cursory glance, but his focus shifted the moment he caught movement from the back seat. A little girl, 7, maybe 8 years old, sat clutching a worn-out doll, her tiny hands wrapped around it so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her blonde hair was slightly disheveled, and she wore a long-sleeved sweater despite the warm temperature. What struck Jamal the most was her expression, wide eyes filled with silent fear. "She looks exhausted," Stephen said casually, glancing back at the girl. "My daughter, Emily. Long night, you know how kids are." Emily's head bobbed slightly, as if in agreement, but her movement felt unnatural, robotic. Jamal noticed the way her body stiffened when Stephen spoke, the way her grip on the doll tightened. And then, for just a brief second when Stephen turned his head, Jamal saw it. A tiny flinch. Barely perceptible, but there. Jamal crouched slightly to be at eye level with the girl. "Hey there, Emily. You doing okay?" The girl hesitated. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, "Yes, sir." Jamal's gut twisted. "Where are you two coming from?" he asked, shifting his gaze back to Stephen. "Just dinner with family," the man replied smoothly. "Ran a little late, but family's important, you know." Jamal forced a polite nod, keeping his tone even. "Of course. Just a heads up, though. Make sure you come to a full stop at signs. It's for everyone's safety." Stephen nodded quickly, a little too quickly. "Absolutely, officer. Won't happen again." Jamal took a step back, uneasiness settling deep in his chest. He wanted to press further, wanted to pull the girl from that car right then and there. But without a clear reason to detain them, he had no legal ground to stand on. Every fiber of his being screamed that something wasn't right. Reluctantly, he handed the documents back. "You're good to go. Drive safe." Stephen smiled again, shifting into drive. "Have a good night, officer." Jamal watched the sedan pull away, its taillights disappearing into the night. But the weight in his chest didn't lift. Back at the precinct, the clock read 9:30 p.m. Most of the night crew were either out on patrol or buried in paperwork. Jamal settled at his desk, but his mind wasn't on the reports in front of him. His thoughts kept circling back to that stop. Something wasn't right. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples, replaying the scene over in his mind. Stephen's too-perfect demeanor, Emily's rigid posture, her pale face, and that brief moment of hesitation before she answered him. Acting on instinct, Jamal pulled up the dashcam footage from his patrol car. He scrubbed through the video, pausing on the moment he spoke to Emily. He zoomed in on her face, her blank, hollow stare, the way her eyes darted around like she was looking for an escape route. Jamal frowned, rewinding the footage. And then he saw it. Emily's lips moved. He played it again, slowed it down. Her lips formed two words. "Help me." A chill ran down his spine. Jamal's hand flew to his keyboard as he opened a separate window, searching through recent Amber Alerts. His heart pounded against his ribs as he scrolled through missing persons reports. And then, Emily Harper, age 7, blonde hair, blue eyes, reported missing 3 days ago from a playground in Ridgefield, 50 miles from here. The report detailed how she had been playing with friends before she vanished. Witnesses described seeing a dark sedan parked nearby. Jamal's blood turned cold. He couldn't sit here, couldn't wait. He pulled up a map, tracing potential routes. Stephen's listed address was in Meadowbrook Lane, but if he'd been operating under the radar this long, he wouldn't be stupid enough to lead police straight to his doorstep. Jamal thought back to the stop, replayed every detail. Stephen had been calm, too calm. People who were hiding something often overcompensated. And Emily, her silent plea for help. Jamal didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys, pushed away from his desk and radioed in. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. I need an immediate Amber Alert verification. Emily Harper, age 7, last seen Ridgefield." The line crackled. A moment later, the response came. "Confirmed. Active Amber Alert. Suspect vehicle, dark sedan, plate number 4A3X 992. Jamal was already sprinting to his cruiser. "I had her," he muttered under his breath. "I had her right in front of me, and I let her go. But not again." Jamal turned the key, the engine roaring to life. There was no room for hesitation now. A child's life depended on him. 50 miles away from where Officer Jamal Carter had last seen Emily Harper, a lone German shepherd raced through a quiet suburban park, his paws kicking up dust as he ran back and forth across the playground. Max had been running for hours. His fur, a mix of black and tan, was matted with dirt. His breath came in short, sharp pants, but he refused to stop. His girl was missing. Emily, she had been there, right there, the last place he had seen her before she was taken. Max let out a loud, desperate bark, pacing in circles around the slide where she had last been playing. He sniffed the ground, his ears twitching at every passing sound, his sharp eyes scanning the area for any sign of her. But she was gone. A few joggers in the park stopped to watch him, murmuring among themselves. A dog running loose wasn't unusual, but this one was different. "He's been here for hours," a woman muttered to her friend. "I saw him last night too," another man added. "Just running in circles like he's looking for something." Max let out another bark, then ran toward the sidewalk, his head whipping from side to side. He was searching, tracking. He knew Emily's scent better than anyone, and even though it was faint, even though it was fading, he could still sense her. A passing motorist pulled over, rolling down his window. "Hey, is that someone's dog?" "Nobody knows," a teenager replied. "He won't leave the playground." Max ran toward the curb, eyes locked on a car passing by. Not the right one. His ears flattened for a moment before he turned, letting out a low whine, and returned to the sandbox where he had last seen Emily. He refused to leave. A call to the police. By late afternoon, Max had drawn enough attention that someone finally called the police. The dispatcher's voice crackled over the radio inside a nearby patrol car. "Unit 3-2. We have reports of a loose dog in Rosewood Park. Witnesses say the dog has been there for over a day and is acting distressed. Possible lost pet. Can someone check it out?" "Copy that," the officer in the car responded. Minutes later, a blue and white police cruiser pulled into the park. 2 officers stepped out, scanning the area before spotting Max near the jungle gym. Max instantly stiffened at the sight of them. His ears perked, his tail went rigid. He didn't trust them. One of the officers, a woman with light brown hair pulled into a ponytail, crouched down a few feet away. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "Are you lost?" Max took a step back, letting out a wary growl. The second officer, a tall man in his 40s, noticed the collar around Max's neck. "Let's see if he's got an ID." They carefully approached, and though Max remained tense, he didn't run. He stood his ground as the female officer reached for his collar, her fingers brushing against the silver tag hanging from it. She turned it over. The name Emily Harper was etched into the metal. Both officers exchanged a look. "Emily Harper," the man said, his voice suddenly serious. "That's the name of the missing girl from Ridgefield." The female officer straightened, pulling out her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 3-2. We have a dog at Rosewood Park wearing a tag with the name Emily Harper, requesting further information on the missing persons case." The response came back within seconds. "Emily Harper, age 7, reported missing 3 days ago. Last seen in Ridgefield Playground. Witnesses reported a dark sedan in the area before she disappeared." The two officers looked at Max, who still hadn't moved. "That means this dog was with her when she was taken." Max refuses to leave. The officers tried to coax Max toward their car, but he wouldn't budge. He barked, pulling back. His eyes darted toward the street, toward the direction Emily had been taken. "Come on, boy," the female officer tried again. "We're gonna help." Max dug his paws into the dirt. He didn't want help. He wanted Emily. Finally, the male officer sighed. "Okay, let's try something else." He reached for his radio again. "Get me Officer Carter from Ridgefield PD. If I'm right, he's going to want to hear about this." Jamal's suspicion grows. At that moment, Jamal Carter was standing outside his cruiser, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He had let her go. Emily had been right there, right in front of him. And now she was gone. He was just about to head back out when his radio crackled. "Officer Carter, this is Unit 3-2 out of Rosewood Park. We found something, possibly connected to your case." Jamal immediately grabbed his radio. "Go ahead." "A dog," the officer said. "German Shepherd, wearing a tag with Emily Harper's name on it." Jamal's blood ran cold. "What?" "He's been running around the playground where she was last seen," the officer continued. "Won't let anyone take him. He's looking for something, or someone." Jamal didn't hesitate. "Send me the address." "Already did," the officer replied. "But be warned, he doesn't trust anyone." Jamal was already in his car before the officer finished speaking. Max meets Jamal. When Jamal pulled into Rosewood Park, the sun was beginning to set. The first thing he saw was Max, standing in the middle of the playground, staring at every passing car. Jamal stepped out slowly, his gaze locking onto the dog. He had seen German Shepherds before, police dogs, K9 units. But this one wasn't trained for law enforcement. This one was trained for love. Max immediately stiffened, his ears flicking in Jamal's direction. His muscles tensed, as if preparing to run. But Jamal didn't move closer. Instead, he crouched down, keeping his voice calm. "Hey, boy," he murmured. "I know you don't trust me, but I think we both want the same thing." Max's tail flicked slightly. Jamal reached into his pocket, pulling out the small stuffed toy he had taken from Emily's room earlier that day, a second doll, similar to the one she had been holding in the car. Max's ears perked, his nose twitched. He knew that scent. Jamal set the doll down in front of him. "Emily," he said softly. Max took a hesitant step forward, then another. Finally, he stopped right in front of Jamal, staring at him, not as an enemy, but as an ally. Jamal took a deep breath. "We're going to find her," he promised, and this time he wouldn't let her slip away. Jamal had worked with tracking dogs before, but he had never seen one like Max. There was something different about this German Shepherd, a determination that went beyond simple training. Max wasn't just following a scent, he was following Emily. Jamal watched as the dog sniffed the air, his ears twitching, nose to the ground, tail stiff. The moment they left Rosewood Park, Jamal had taken Max straight to areas where Stephen Blake might have passed through, The first 2 stops had been dead ends, no reaction, no clues. But now, as they approached a small roadside diner, Max suddenly stiffened. Then he bolted. The first clue. The diner was an old-fashioned neon-lit truck stop sitting at the edge of a nearly deserted highway. It was the kind of place that catered to travelers passing through, not regulars. Jamal pulled the cruiser into the nearly empty parking lot, just as Max lunged forward, barking furiously. His paws scraped against the pavement, nose flaring as he sniffed wildly. Jamal hurried after him. "Easy, boy. What do you smell?" Max darted toward the front entrance, stopping just short of the glass doors, sniffing the air, then turning sharply to the right, toward the side of the building. Jamal's heartbeat quickened. Emily was here. Max let out a loud bark, pacing anxiously in front of the building. Jamal wasted no time. He yanked open the door, stepping into the diner, his badge already in hand. The place was nearly empty, just a tired waitress behind the counter, a cook flipping burgers in the back, and an older man nursing a cup of coffee. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, looked up as Jamal entered. "Can I help you, officer?" Jamal didn't waste a second. He pulled out his phone, showing her a photo of Emily. "Have you seen this girl? She may have been here with a man, late last night or early this morning." The waitress squinted at the screen. Then her face changed. "Oh, Lord, yeah," she breathed. "She was here just last night." Jamal felt a bolt of adrenaline. The waitress set down her rag, looking uneasy. "She was with a man, 40s, clean-cut. Looked put together, but something about him was off." Jamal's jaw clenched. "What happened?" The woman hesitated, then sighed. The girl dropped her doll. Poor thing looked nervous, like she didn't want to cause trouble. But the man, he snapped, called her stupid, yelled at her. Jamal's hands balled into fists. "She looked scared," the waitress continued, shaking her head. "Didn't say a word, just grabbed her doll and sat there, staring at her plate." "Did you hear anything else?" Jamal pressed. The waitress hesitated. Then, "He got a phone call. He kept his voice low, but I heard something about needing a place to stay for the night. He left in a hurry after that." Jamal's mind raced. "Did you see which way they went?" The waitress nodded. "Yeah, south, toward the highway." Jamal turned to leave, but then he heard Max bark outside. The trail grows hot. Jamal rushed out of the diner to find Max in the parking lot, sniffing furiously near one of the empty parking spaces. His tail was stiff, his body rigid. Jamal's heart pounded. This was where Stephen had parked. Max let out a sharp bark, then turned toward the road, nose to the ground. He was tracking. Jamal hurried to his cruiser and grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Carter. I've got a positive scent match at a roadside diner on Route 17. Suspect vehicle was last seen heading south." "Copy that," the dispatcher responded. "Do you have a possible location?" Jamal looked down at Max, who had stopped near a patch of dirt, paws scraping at the ground. He was digging, not randomly, but as if something had been there. Jamal crouched beside him and froze. Tire tracks, fresh, leading south. A surge of adrenaline hit him. "Dispatch, I think I know where he's headed." The witness who sealed it. As Jamal was about to get back into his car, a voice called out, "Hey, officer!" An older man, who had been sitting inside the diner drinking coffee, stepped outside. "I heard you asking about that guy, the one with the little girl." Jamal turned sharply. "You saw them?" The man nodded. "Yeah. I was parked out back last night when he left. Thought it was strange. He was looking around like he didn't want to be seen." "Did you see where he went?" The old man scratched his head. "Not exactly, but I saw him make a call before he got in the car." Jamal's patience was running thin. "What did he say?" The old man hesitated. "Something about meeting at a motel, Lakeside Inn." Jamal froze. Lakeside Inn. That name was familiar, because it was the kind of place where people who didn't want to be found disappeared. It was just off the highway, isolated, cheap, no cameras, no questions asked. Jamal felt a pulse of urgency. He turned to Max, who was still focused on the tire tracks, ready to go. Jamal grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, I have a lead on the suspect. Possible location, Lakeside Inn, just south of Route 17, requesting immediate backup." "Copy that," the dispatcher replied. "Units en route." Jamal was already moving. He threw open the car door, Max jumping in beside him. As he turned onto the highway, his eyes burned with determination. This time, he wouldn't be too late. Jamal's fingers tightened around the wheel as his cruiser sped down the highway toward Lakeside Inn. The neon sign flickered weakly in the distance, casting eerie shadows over the desolate motel. The place was exactly what he expected: run down, isolated, and perfect for someone trying to stay off the radar. His radio crackled. "Units in position, awaiting your signal." Jamal pulled into the far end of the lot, his heart hammering. He turned to Max, who sat alert in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the motel like he knew exactly what was coming. "This is it, boy," Jamal murmured. "Let's bring her home." He stepped out, hand resting on his holster, and signaled toward Detective Sarah Mills, who was already moving into position with her team. "We go in fast," Jamal whispered into his radio. "Blake might have an escape plan. We cut it off." Sarah gave a curt nod. "On my count." Jamal took a deep breath. Then, "Go, go, go." Lakeside Inn erupts in chaos. The moment officers rushed the front door, the silence of the night shattered. "Police! Hands in the air!" Rooms were kicked open, suspects restrained, but there was no sign of Stephen Blake. Jamal swept through the dim hallway, checking every corner. The stench of damp carpet and cigarette smoke clung to the air. Nothing. Then a sharp bark cut through the night. Max. Jamal's head snapped toward the parking lot. Max was no longer beside him. Instead, the German Shepherd was bolting toward the tree line behind the motel, barking furiously. Jamal's stomach dropped. Emily wasn't here. She was in the woods. The hunt through the forest. Jamal didn't hesitate. He took off after Max, plunging into the dark forest. The trees swallowed the moonlight, leaving only the dull glow of his flashlight bouncing between the trunks. Branches clawed at his uniform, dirt crunching beneath his boots. Max was just ahead, nose to the ground, leading the way. "Emily!" Jamal shouted. "Emily, can you hear me?" Silence, and then a rustling sound. Max stopped abruptly, ears pricked. A low growl rumbled deep in his throat. Jamal raised his weapon. His pulse pounded in his ears. "Step out," he commanded. A shadow moved, then a flash of silver, a knife. An attack in the dark. The attacker lunged from the trees, blade glinting in the moonlight. Jamal barely had time to react before Max sprang into action. Snarling, the German Shepherd leapt, his teeth sinking into the attacker's wrist. The man let out a scream, the knife clattering to the ground. He staggered backward, flailing as Max held firm. Jamal moved fast. He kicked the knife aside, then drove his elbow into the man's ribs, forcing him to the ground. "Stay down!" Jamal barked, yanking his cuffs from his belt. Max released his grip, but stayed poised, still growling, teeth bared. Jamal flipped the man onto his stomach, snapping the cuffs onto his wrists. "Who else is out here?" Jamal demanded. "Where is she?" The man refused to answer. But Jamal wasn't listening anymore, because Max had taken off again, and this time Jamal knew exactly where he was going. Stephen Blake escapes. Jamal tore through the forest, following Max's furious barks. Then, the distant sound of an engine roaring to life. "No." Jamal burst through the clearing just in time to see the taillights of a dark sedan, Blake's sedan, peeling away onto the main road. "Damn it!" Jamal growled, yanking his radio. "Suspect on the move, heading eastbound on Highway 19. Sarah's voice came back instantly. "Units in pursuit." But Jamal knew Blake had a head start, and Emily was still with him. Max, standing beside him, let out a low, frustrated whine. Jamal crouched beside the dog, gripping his fur. "We're not stopping," he said, voice like steel. Not now. Max let out a quiet bark in agreement. Jamal rose to his feet, determination hardening in his chest. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Jamal barely paused before taking off through the forest, Max leading the way. The dog's paws pounded against the damp earth, his nose working frantically, following a scent only he could detect. The wind howled through the trees, branches whipping against Jamal's uniform as he pushed forward, heart hammering in his chest. Blake was running out of time. Max suddenly veered left, his growl deep and urgent. Jamal followed, his pulse quickening. They were getting close. The escape plan. Breaking through the dense tree line, Jamal skidded to a stop. Just ahead, in a clearing near a gravel road, Stephen Blake was dragging Emily toward another vehicle. The car was different, a smaller sedan, silver, unmarked. An escape car. Emily struggled in his grip, her face streaked with dirt and tears. "Let me go!" she screamed, kicking at him. Blake gritted his teeth, yanking her harder. "Shut up and get in the car!" Jamal stepped forward, raising his gun. "Blake! Drop her now!" Blake froze, his back still to Jamal. Slowly he turned, one arm wrapped tightly around Emily's small frame. A knife glinted in his other hand. "Stay back," Blake warned, pressing the blade closer to Emily's side. Jamal's grip on his gun tightened. One wrong move, and Emily could get hurt. The standoff. The air between them thickened with tension. Jamal kept his voice calm, measured. "It's over, Blake. Let her go." Blake shook his head, his breathing ragged. "You don't get it, officer. If I go down swinging." Emily let out a sob, squirming in his grasp, but he held her too tightly. Jamal's mind raced. He needed a way to separate them. Then he felt Max shift beside him. Jamal didn't take his eyes off Blake, but he gave the smallest nod. Max understood. Max attacks. In a blur of motion, Max launched forward. Blake barely had time to react before the German shepherd sank his teeth into his calf. "Ah!" Blake screamed, his grip on Emily loosening just enough. Emily twisted free, stumbling backward. Jamal moved instantly. One swift tackle, and Blake was on the ground. The knife clattered against the rocks as Jamal pinned him, twisting his arms behind his back. Blake thrashed, but Jamal pressed harder. "You're done, Blake!" Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. "We've got units inbound. Do you have Emily?" Jamal looked up. Emily wasn't running. She was standing right next to Max, clinging to his fur. A tearful reunion. The moment Blake was cuffed and secured, Jamal turned to Emily. The little girl was shaking, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. But she wasn't crying for fear. She was crying because she saw Max. Jamal barely had time to react before Emily collapsed into the dog's fur, wrapping her tiny arms around him. "You found me," she sobbed. "You really found me." Max whined softly, licking her face, nudging her closer. Jamal's throat tightened. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a reunion. Jamal stands back. The sound of approaching sirens filled the night air. Sarah and her team burst onto the scene, weapons drawn, but they weren't needed anymore. Blake was secured. Emily was safe. Jamal took a slow breath, watching as Emily refused to let go of Max. It was over, and for the first time that night, Jamal allowed himself to believe it. The ride back to the station was silent, except for the occasional rustling of Max's fur as Emily curled up against him in the back seat. The little girl hadn't let go of the dog since they left the forest. Jamal stole a glance through the rearview mirror. Emily was exhausted, her small fingers tangled in Max's thick fur, eyes barely staying open. Max, on the other hand, remained alert, his body pressed protectively against her. Even now, he wasn't letting his guard down. Jamal's grip on the wheel tightened. If it weren't for Max, this story might have ended differently. But it wasn't over yet, not until Stephen Blake faced justice. The interrogation. Back at the station, Blake sat slumped in the interrogation room, wrists cuffed to the table. His face was twisted into mock frustration, like this was all some big misunderstanding. Jamal leaned against the wall, watching as Detective Sarah Mills flipped through a folder of documents. Blake sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Look, officer, I don't know what this is about, but I was just taking my daughter home. You're making a mistake." Sarah didn't even look up. Instead, she slid a single sheet of paper across the table. "A DNA report." Blake's jaw tightened. "Funny," Sarah said coolly, "because this test says otherwise." Jamal stepped forward. "You took her. And we're not just talking about Emily, are we?" Silence. Sarah pushed another file toward him, fake birth certificates, falsified adoption papers, and a long list of missing children. Blake's face paled. "You've been at this a long time, haven't you?" Jamal pressed, his voice low and dangerous. "How many kids have you taken?" Blake clenched his jaw. "I don't know what you're talking about." Jamal's patience was wearing thin. He turned, giving a sharp whistle. The door opened, and Max padded in. Blake stiffened. The German shepherd's ears were pricked, eyes locked onto Blake like he was a predator. Sarah smirked. "See, here's the thing. Max has already tracked Emily, and we're pretty sure he can track the others." Jamal stepped closer, watching as Blake's fingers twitched against the table. "Should we find out?" Blake's breath hitched. For the first time, he looked nervous. Max sniffed the air once, then twice, and then he let out a deep, menacing growl. Blake flinched. Jamal leaned down, his voice like steel. "You're done." The investigation unfolds. With Max's help, authorities began tracking Blake's movements, uncovering abandoned safe houses and hidden locations used by his operation. The more they dug, the more horrifying the truth became. Blake wasn't working alone, he was part of a larger trafficking ring, and Emily wasn't the first child taken. As officers raided stash houses across multiple states, they found more children, some missing for months, some even longer. One by one, families received the calls they had been waiting for. And Max? Max led them to every single one. Emily's reunion. Days later, Emily Harper sat in a warm, well-lit room, her small hands still buried in Max's fur. Her parents had just arrived. Jamal watched from the hallway as Clara Harper rushed forward, falling to her knees before her daughter. Emily didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she looked up. "Mom!" Clara let out a choked sob. "Oh, baby! Yes, it's me!" Emily threw herself into her mother's arms. Jamal turned away, giving them a moment. But Emily wasn't done. "Wait!" she said suddenly, turning to Max. The German shepherd tilted his head. Emily hesitated for only a second before wrapping her arms around his thick neck, hugging him tight. "You found me," she whispered. "You really found me." Max licked her cheek, his tail thumping against the floor. And for the first time in days, Emily smiled. A hero's acknowledgement. Later that evening, as the Harpers prepared to take Emily home, Clara turned to Jamal. "We don't know how to thank you," she said, voice thick with emotion. "But I think we all know who the real hero is." Her gaze dropped to Max, who sat beside Jamal, alert as ever. "Max is the reason she's here," Jamal admitted. Clara knelt in front of the dog, brushing her fingers gently through his fur. "Thank you," she whispered. Max let out a quiet huff, as if acknowledging the words. Jamal couldn't help but smile. "Don't worry," he said, scratching behind the dog's ear. "He's just doing his job." But deep down, they all knew the truth. Max wasn't just doing his job, he had saved Emily's life.